Hello students, welcome to my channel BioAlils. Here we are discussing biology for class 10. In my earlier videos, we have started discussing about the chapter life process, and we have studied about the first life process, that is the nutrition in plants as well as in human beings. In this video, we are going to discuss another life process, that is transportation. Here we will discuss about the transportation in plants. Now, first, let us look at what is transported through the plant's tissues. Now, there are three main things mainly which are transported. If we see, these three things are mainly the water, then the minerals, and the food. When we say food, it is usually the products of the photosynthesis. We need to understand where from and to where these things are transported. Now, when we say water, obviously it is present in the soil. So, from the soil, the plant can obtain with the help of the roots. Therefore, the roots can absorb it and transfer it to the leaves where it is required for the process of photosynthesis, as well as it is required for all the cells which are living cells, because water is necessary to maintain the shape of the cell. Then coming to the minerals. Minerals are also present in the soil and it is always transported along with the water. Water and mineral is always transported together. So it is also transported from the roots. Now, can you say why are the minerals necessary for the plants? For any living organism, not just plants, minerals are necessary mainly for the growth and development process. Therefore, all the living tissues require actually minerals. Therefore, from roots, it will be transported to not only leaves but any other living tissues of the plants. Food, that is the products of photosynthesis. We are already saying it is produced by photosynthesis, means it is produced mainly in the leaves or other similar green tissues. Now, from the leaves, it will be transported to where? The food is necessary for all living tissues, so it will be transported from the leaves to the different living tissues of the plant again. Now, not only it is transported to the living tissues for utilization, but a major amount of food is also kept stored. So there are various storage tissues where the food may be stored. So whenever photosynthesis is not going on, there is a possibility that transfer of food will take place from those storage tissues. It can be some storage roots, leaves or stem, etc. And from there it will be transported to again the different living parts of the plant. Coming to the next topic, that is what is the tissue present in the plant which helps in this process of transportation. So there are mainly two tissues. Again, this is a revision topic as such because you have studied in class 9 in details. One is xylem, which is mainly involved in the transportation of water as well as minerals, and the other is the phloem tissue. Now, xylem is made up of xylem vessels, tracheids, parenchyma, as well as fibers. Sieve is made up of sieve cells and the sieve tubes, the two main tissue which are involved in transportation, associated with companion cells. Then you have phloem parenchyma and even phloem fibers. Correct? Now, the process of transportation of water and dissolved minerals together through xylem is called as the ascent of sap. And similarly, process of transportation of food is called as translocation. The direction of transportation, when we talk about water and dissolved minerals, the direction of transportation is always in an upward direction because it is transported from roots to the different tissues of the plant. But phloem tissue transportation of food can be in any direction. It can be upward, it can be downward also. So we can call it as a bidirectional transportation. Very important word, passive transportation and active transportation means passive transportation is when there is no energy requirement for transportation. That happens through the xylem. However, active transportation is when there is energy involved in the specific transportation of food substances through the phloem. Okay, active and passive transportation in general means whether the energy is required or not required respectively. Then coming to the processes of transportation, specifically ascent of sap is the process. during which transportation of water and dissolved minerals take place. So the sap is basically the water and the minerals or soil nutrients which are mixed in it. There are two main physical forces called as root pressure and transpirational pull involved in this process. Let us look at the root pressure first. We will take the help of this diagram to understand the entire process. In the exam, you can write this entire flow chart if you have to write about the root pressure. This explains the entire process in proper details. Now let us look at this diagram and understand what we have written here. You can read through this yourself, but let us look at the diagram first. We are looking at the section of a root actually, a longitudinal section, where we see this is the outermost epidermis layer of the root. Then you have some cortex tissue here, that is the inner tissue of the root. Then more layers of tissue like endodermis, etc. are present. You have not studied those tissues, so you may not understand it properly. But these are all the tissue layers of the root, and innermost layer is that of the xylem, okay, which continues upward as stem xylem. Then it will go up to the leaf xylem. Now, on these type of epidermis in the roots, they often have some extensions, okay, which are called as root hairs. Surrounding the roots, we know there are a lot of soil particles where the water molecules as well as the nutrients are mixed. Now, the nutrients or the minerals are always present in the form of certain ions, okay. So now if we look at the process, step number 1, mineral ions actively enter the root hair cell. Means the first mineral ions, all the various mineral ions, they will enter into the root hair cells using energy. That's why we are saying it is actively enters. Actively means using energy. When the minerals enter inside the cell there is a hypertonic environment created. Outside there is a hypotonic environment. We know that water always moves from hypotonic to hypertonic, that is from low concentration to higher concentration. So by the process of endosmosis, the water will start entering from outside into the root hair. Okay, so continuous entry of mineral ions ensure that continuously water keeps on entering into the root hair cells. When these cells will get filled with water, obviously water will start moving to the next cell, and then to the next cell layer, then to the next cell layer. As the water keeps on moving continuously, the inner layers of the cell get filled with water. So when it is filled with water, obviously what will happen? Inside a pressure is created, right? So that pressure which is created due to continuous entry of water is actually called as a osmotic pressure. Okay, since it is caused due to osmotic entry of water, so you call it as an osmotic pressure. And this is happening where? In the roots, so you call it as a root pressure. Okay, now this root pressure allows the movement of water through these layers of the root, ultimately reaching the xylem. Then in the xylem the water will start moving upward because continuously water is entering, so there is a kind of pushing force which is pushing the water into the xylem to move it upward. Fine, but this pushing force is not enough to push the water to much height in tall plants and all. So there is another force that comes into action, that's called as a transpirational pull. Now what happens in transpirational pull? Understand, this is a leaf section if you understand, where this is a stomata. Now from the stomata, continuously water keeps on going out because of transpiration. Okay, that is loss of water in the vapor form. Now when water is continuously going out in the form of vapor, then immediately inside the stomata, the air cavity or the stomatal cavity which is present, that cavity will lose water. The water in this area will decrease. So there is a low pressure created. Whenever there is a decrease in the volume, the pressure will decrease. So the volume of water here decreases, so a low pressure is created. As a result, the water from these different cells will start moving to this area because there is low pressure. When the water from the cells come out to this area, in the cell there is a low pressure created. So the water from the xylem vessels of the leaf, they start getting into the cells. So indirectly, if we see water from these xylem vessels in the leaves, they get into these cells. From these cells, they get into this substomatal cavity, from where it goes out through the stomata. This continuous entry or exit of water due to the process of transpiration creates a decrease in the water concentration in this xylem of leaves. As a result, in this xylem of leaves, there is a decrease in the pressure. Okay. Now we know that on the other hand, in the previous process we have seen the water is moving continuously from the root xylem to the stem xylem continuously, and then ultimately from the stem xylem it will reach the root leaf xylem, but it will not reach by itself. As a result, what happens here is, here if it is the stem xylem where some amount of water is present, here in the leaf xylem there is no water present. So from here there will be a high pressure created. However, above here there will be a high pressure created. Here there will be a low pressure created. So from high pressure to low pressure, the water will start going up. Okay, that's how the movement of water takes place, and this is a pulling force. Fine. Due to difference in the pressure from high pressure to low pressure, the water is pulled up. This is exactly what happens when you drink a liquid or some kind of cold drinks with the help of a straw. Okay, in a bottle you take a liquid, you have a liquid, they call it as a cold drink, and then you put a straw there. When you suck into the straw, if you think in a very slow motion, then what happens when you first start sucking, the air in the straw, it comes out, okay, in the upper part of the straw. As a result, in that upper part of the straw there is a low pressure created because you have taken out the air from there. In the lower part of the straw you have the liquid. So from that part the liquid start moving up into the straw and ultimately reaches your mouth. So that's exactly what is happening here. From here the water is being taken out, so the water from this area start moving up due to the difference in the pressure. Okay, so that's why it is called as a pull, and since it is overall due to the process of transpiration, we call this process as a transpirational pull. Okay, so these two forces, that is root pressure and transpirational pull, is together responsible for the upward movement of water and the dissolved minerals. Now coming to the translocation of food process. Now here also a very much similar process take place. Understand it carefully what is happening. Here also we say these are the cells where your photosynthesis has taken place. Result of photosynthesis is glucose. However, glucose is not dissolvable in water. It's not soluble in water, so it cannot be transported mixed with water. So the glucose is converted into sucrose. Okay, so the sucrose is now the transportable form of the food. That sucrose is transferred from the leaf cell to a cell, that is companion cell. We know that sieve tube cells are all associated with a companion cell. So this transfer of sucrose from the leaf cell to the companion cell requires energy. So we call it as an active transport. Okay. From companion cells, it will come to the sieve tube cell in the phloem. It's written here, it's a phloem. So it's a sieve tube cell. So from companion cell, it comes to the sieve tube cell again using energy. So in both the steps, so the leaf cell to the companion cell to the sieve tube cell, using energy, the sucrose is transported. Now, this phloem and xylem, they are always present together in the form of a bundle. When there is more and more sucrose accumulated, then from the nearby xylem, water starts entering into this phloem due to the process of osmosis. Okay. As here more and more water transfers, the water mixed with sucrose forms a high concentration, or we call it as a high osmotic concentration in that place where it is present. Okay, try to understand. Means right now there is a high osmotic concentration in this area of the sieve tube cell. Let us say this is one cell, we call it as a sink, means a cell where food is necessary. Okay, where the food is not present. It's necessary means it is not present. So in this area, therefore, nearby phloem, there is less amount of food or there is no food, creating a low pressure. So from this high pressure to low pressure, there is transfer of substance. In this diagram, it is moving downward. If it is somewhere above also, it will move to that place irrespective of the force of gravity. It's not due to force of gravity. It is due to the difference in the pressure of these tubes. Okay, that is from one place to another place, the transfer of the food mixed in water will take place. Then here once the food is transported, again those sucrose molecule will be transferred from the sieve tube cell to the companion cell, and then from companion cell to this sink cell, which could be a root cell or it could be some other cell. Okay, again by using energy once more. So again that's why we call it as an active transport. Now, recall that here, when the sucrose came from companion cell to the sieve tube cell, then the water from xylem came to the sieve tube cell. Now, here, when the sucrose went out from the sieve tube cell to the companion cell, water also goes back to the xylem vessels nearby. Okay, so water keeps on therefore circulating in between xylem and phloem. Okay, thereby transferring the food from one place to the another place. This is exactly what we call as translocation of food. You can read through this chart which explains the same process and understand it properly. So that was all about transportation in plants. Coming to some of your in-text questions in the book. What are the components of the transport system in highly organized plants? So you have to explain about the xylem and phloem components. How are water and minerals transported in plants? You have to explain the two processes of ascent of sap, that is your root pressure and transpirational pull. How is food transported in plants? Just now what we discussed, the translocation process in details, you have to explain. Difference between transport of minerals in xylem and phloem, you have to write about this table of difference, how transportation take place. Mainly this lower points. Above are the components. These are the three differences in the transportation process. Then coming to some extra questions, two physical forces involved in the transportation of water in plants. You have to the same question which are involved in the ascent of sap. You have to explain the root pressure and the transpirational pull. What is transpiration? There is loss of water in the vapor form is transpiration. What causes the root pressure? There is a continuous entry of water due to the osmosis is causing the root pressure. What is the function of companion cells? So it helps in the transportation of substances from one cell to the sieve tube cell. Okay, and also it maintains the metabolic activities of the sieve tube cells. So that was all in the transportation of plants. Next video we will discuss about transportation in human. So thank you so much, students.